हेलो एवरीवन, जय हिंद एंड वेलकम टू द प्लेटफॉर्म ऑफ श्रीराम्स आईएएस। आप सभी का स्वागत है श्रीराम्स आईएएस के प्लेटफॉर्म पर। इन टुडेज सेशन विल बी डिस्कसिंग अबाउट फंडामेंटल ड्यूटीज in next 20 minutes. So we have already covered lots of things in our sessions. Already we have covered the introduction, that is the preamble, also how the constitution was made, and then we have covered about the union and its territories, we have covered about citizenship, we have covered about fundamental rights as well as directive principles of state policy that we have covered till so far. So if you have not seen those videos and you have not revised all them, so please go through them. These videos are available on the platform of Shriram's IAS. Now, before moving ahead and discussing fundamental duties with you today, let me tell you that if you are encountering any problem, kahin par bhi koi doubt hai, koi problem hai in your preparation for the UPSC, what you can do is you can go for the free 1:1 mentorship that we are providing you at Shriram's IAS. ऑलराइट, यहां पर आपको बहुत सिंपल सा काम करना है, दैट इज देयर इज अ लिंक इन द डिस्क्रिप्शन बॉक्स। उस लिंक को आपको फिल करना है और उस लिंक को गूगल फॉर्म को फिल करने के बाद वे आर ट्रस्टेड मेंटर्स, दे विल गेट इन कांटेक्ट विद यू एंड जो भी डाउट है, जो भी प्रॉब्लम है, जो जहां पर भी आप स्टक हैं, that will have a proper solution. I must guarantee you that. All right, now when it comes to the fundamental duties, okay, we have covered fundamental rights, we have covered about the directive principles of state policy, and today we'll be talking about the fundamental duties. Now, it was said by Mahatma Gandhi that rights and duties are the two sides of the same coin. Right? Why I'm using these quotes is also very important for you to understand that in UPSC you will find such type of questions also, that who has used or whose words were these. Okay? So this type of questions you will find in your prelims examination, and it is important to know these different words that were used by various our forefathers. All right. Now, when it comes to the constitution, they are part of the constitutional trinity, where we are talking about the fundamental rights, the fundamental directive principles of state policy, as well as the fundamental duties, because they provide, when it comes to fundamental rights, that is there in the part 3 of the constitution, it gives you the political freedom. At the same time, directive principles of state policy in part 4 of the constitution provides you with the social as well as economic justice. And when it comes to fundamental duties, that is your responsibility that had been added as part 4 in the constitution of the India. Now, when the constitution was initially made and it came into effect in 1950, there was no fundamental duties that were added. Later on, these fundamental duties in Part 4A were added by 42nd Amendment Act of the Constitution. Alright, it was during the emergency that this 42nd Amendment Act in 1976 was passed, and this separate part, that is Part 4A, were added to the Constitution. This was inspired and based upon the Soviet Constitution, the former Constitution of USSR, and also the purpose was to balance the rights with the duties in, where it was seen that the civilian or the civic sense, civic discipline was declining. The recommendation for adding the fundamental duties in our constitution was given by Sardar Swaran Singh Committee in 1976 itself on the constitutional amendments. Now, as I have told you that the fundamental duties are located in Part 4A under Article 51A. They were added by 42nd Amendment Act in 1976, and there were 10 duties that were added by 42nd Amendment Act. But later on, by 86th Amendment Act in 2002, in 86th Amendment Act, by 86th Amendment Act 2002, there was 11th fundamental duty added. And now, you must have recalled. Now, recalling is another very important thing that you should practice. When I have told you 86th Amendment Act, the Right to Education Act, which have added Article 21A to the Constitution, must come to your mind. Alright, so 86th Amendment Act of 2002 also added the another 11th fundamental duty to our Constitution. Now, when it comes to the nature of the fundamental duty, they are non-justiciable and they are the moral obligations which are on the citizens of India. Alright, now Article 51A says that it shall be duty of every citizen of India. Every citizen of India, that means that these fundamental duties are not applicable on foreigners and the different entities which are there. Alright, and it is to uphold the ideals and values that make democracy work? Now let's understand what these 11 fundamental duties are related to. The first is to abide by the constitution, respect its ideal and institution that it provides for the constitutional loyalty. The second one is to cherish noble ideals of freedom struggle, that is, it imbibes the sense of patriotism in a citizen of India. Then to uphold the sovereignty, unity and integrity of the nation, that is, it provides for the national unity, that is again mentioned in the preamble as well. The fourth one is to defend the country and render national service whenever called upon to do so, that is, it is a fundamental duty related to civic defense. Then we have to promote harmony and spirit of common brotherhood, that promotes communal harmony and also integrity of the nation. And then to value and preserve rich heritage of composite culture, where we are talking about cultural preservation. The seventh fundamental duty is about to protect and improve the natural environment, including forest, lakes, rivers and wildlife. And then the eighth one is to develop scientific temper, humanism and spirit of inquiry and reform. And then we have ninth fundamental duty that relates to public responsibility and says to safeguard public property and abjure violence in all forms. And then we have the 10th fundamental duty, which says strive towards excellence in all spheres of individual and collective activity. So these were the original 10 fundamental duties that were added by the 86th amendment, by the 42nd Amendment Act. And through 86th Amendment Act, there was another duty, 11th fundamental duty, that was added, duty of parents or guardians to provide education to children aged 6 to 14 years. Alright, so these are the 11 fundamental duties that are there. The 11th fundamental duty was a landmark addition. I told you even before that the Article 21A as well as the 11th fundamental duty were added by 86th Amendment Act in 2002, and it added Article 51AK, and also it is correlated to the right to education that we have already studied, Article 21A, that marks the linkage or interlinkage between the rights and the duties, all right, and promotes citizen participation in early childhood education and the child education between 6 to 14 years of age, all right. Now, when it comes to the fundamental duties, what are the key features? The key features are that they apply exclusively to the citizen and not to foreigners and the entities. I told you this, all right. They are non-justiciable. They are enforceable only through moral, social and legal pressure, but cannot be directly enforced by the courts. Alright, they serve as guiding principles for ethical public conduct and as moral dimension or moral compass, and also they can be used to interpret laws, justify restrictions on rights and inspire legislation as well. Now, when we talk about the fundamental duty, there are certain philosophical foundations from where these fundamental duties find the inspiration from, like from the Gita's concept of Karma Yoga, also from the Buddhist duty consciousness, and also from the Gandhian moral responsibility. Along with this, there are moral compasses which have been taken from the Greek civic virtue as well as from Rousseau's social contract theory that was there. Now, it was the Ambedkar's vision, or Dr. Ambedkar's vision, where he have laid down that the political democracy must rest on the social and also moral responsibility. That is, the democracy can thrive or it can survive only when the citizen embrace both the freedom as well as obligation or their duties together. Alright. Now, when it comes to the judicial interpretation, there are three major cases related to the fundamental duties. There is AIMS Students Union versus AIMS in 2001, where it was said that the fundamental duties are equally important as the fundamental rights. Alright. Along with this, MC Mehta was into environmental activism, and through MC Mehta versus Union of India case in 1988, it was laid down that the Article 51AG, that is for the environmental protection, used to promote the environmental protection. And also in Rangnath Mishra case, very important case in 2003, where the Supreme Court have laid down that the court can rely on the fundamental duties to morally interpret the laws which are there. All right, again, very important case, Rangnath Mishra case, where it was laid down that the duties can be, or the fundamental duties can be utilized for interpretation of the laws that are there. Now, over here, the judiciary has indirectly enforced the fundamental duties through interpretation of the Article 21 and also for the PIL or public interest litigation. Now, when it comes to the reflections, all right, or the different laws which have been made, how these fundamental duties have been legally enforced. So we have Prevention of Damage to Public Property Act that was passed in 1984 that reflects to safeguard public property and to abjure violence. At the same time, we have Environmental Protection Act of 1986 that reflects to protect and improve the natural environment. And also we have Right to Information Act of 2005 that is to develop the scientific temper, humanism and the spirit of inquiry, especially spirit of inquiry. So right to information is for developing that spirit of inquiry. And then we have Right to Education Act of 2009. Of course, that was added or it was implemented and forced to implement the right to education that was provided by Article 21A, as well as for the providing opportunities by the wards or the guardians, not wards, by the parents or the guardians to ward for their education between 6 to 14 years of age. So many acts have been inspired by the fundamental duties and they have been formed, and that is how this has been implemented. Now, when we talk about fundamental duties and fundamental rights, the fundamental rights are legally enforceable, all right, as well as they protect the citizen from the state. When it comes to the applicability, some of the fundamental rights apply directly to the citizens and not to the non-citizen, but some of them are also applicable on the foreigners as well as non-citizen. They could be enforced through courts, and when it comes to the fundamental duties, they are morally and moral compass and non-enforceable. They are guide or they guide citizens' conduct. That is the objective of fundamental duties, and they are applicable to only citizens. Alright, when it comes to the enforcement of fundamental rights, they cannot be enforced by the courts, but indirectly through moral and legal ways they can be enforced. And when it comes to the the interaction or relationship between fundamental rights and fundamental duties, both are complementary in nature. Alright, they balance freedom with the responsibility, and that is the nature of fundamental rights and duties. Alright, now they are very important and they matter. Why they matter? Because of the various objectives that it portrays. The objective is for the national integration. It promotes unity across diversity. Alright, at the same time, it promotes civic responsibility where it strengthens the public consciousness. It acts for the moral check and prevents the misuse of the rights which have been provided by fundamental rights. Also, there is constitutional patriotism where a person, he values the constitution and also cultivates pride in the democratic values which have been laid down by the Constitution of India, as well as it is important for the democratic citizenship where awareness and accountability are both important. So therefore, they are important. Now, when it comes to the criticism of the fundamental duties, of course, they have been criticized. Alright, they have been criticized because they were added during the emergency and perceived as coercive and authoritarian in the origin. At the same time, they have been criticized for being vague and undefined because there is lack of clarity and specificity that makes the enforcement of these duties impossible. Alright, there is no legal sanction and there is absence of penalties that limits the impact of the fundamental duties, and also they are citizen focused and emphasizes citizen duties more than the state's reciprocal obligations which should be there. Now, when it comes to strengthening of the fundamental duties, there was Justice Verma Committee that was constituted in 1999, and it gave its recommendation where it said that the implementation should be through education as well as the awareness campaigns. It has to be integrated into the school curricula, national-wide or nation-wide, and also incorporated in public administration ethics training as well. Now, at the same time, there were certain more fundamental duties which were suggested to be added that related to gender equality, corruption-free society, as well as digital ethics and responsibility. Of course, when it comes to digital ethics and responsibility, this is one of the most important, context that you can see where the fundamental duties could be enlarged, or it can encompass this. All right, when it comes to the global comparison, so there are different duties which find mentions in different constitutions. Like for example, in the USA, there are civic duties, tax compliance, jury service and law obedience, and there is a legal compulsion for these duties. All right, in Japan, the duties are given under the constitution under Article 12, and they are just like Indian constitution, they are moral obligation and they are not legally compliant. All right, at the same time, when it comes to China, there are socialist duties which are moral and legal, and there it is strictly enforceable. At the same time, when it comes to India, we have fundamental duties under Part 4A, which are moral as well as educational blend of the duties which are not enforceable through the courts. All right. Now, these fundamental duties find contemporary relevance in today's society because we have different environmental movements. And when we have different environmental movements, we are talking about climate change, we are talking about global warming. Of course, right now we are under, there is a conference or Conference of Parties or COP30 that is being organized in Belém in Brazil. So of course, these environmental movements, we have the duty to protect nature, and also it drives the climate action as well as the conservation. Then we are in the social media age. All right, we use Instagram, we use Facebook, there is LinkedIn. So there are different social media that every one of us are using. So it is duty to maintain harmony and truthfulness in the digital spaces where it finds its importance. And then there is fake news as well as intolerance that is growing in the media. All right, so there is growing need for civic ethics and responsible information sharing when it comes to media houses, and at the same time there is emerging e-duties for responsible online behavior and digital responsibility. So that is where the fundamental duties find their relevance in today's society. Now, what are the way forward? The way forward is that we can have civic duty literacy program where we can introduce comprehensive fundamental duty education in the schools nationwide. At the same time, when it comes to annual citizenship index, we can lay down an annual citizenship index where we can measure and track public adherence to the constitutional fundamental duties which are given. All right, we can have the constitutional awareness as well, where we can organize the drives by the government and the civil society organization where they can teach the importance of the fundamental duties to the citizens of India, as well as there is the need for rights and duty balance. We always demand about our rights, but we are not concerned about the duty as a citizen. So there has to be a balance. There has to be a balance between the rights as well as the duty, and that is very, very important in the public life and for the citizens of India. All right, so that is all in today's session. In the conclusion, I would just say that the survival of democracy depends not only on rights, but also on the sense of the duty. These fundamental duties are moral obligations. They are moral backbone of the Constitution of India and of the Indian democracy as well. All right, when it comes to the citizens, all right, they transform citizens from passive beneficiary to the active participants in the governance system, and also the rights and responsibilities along with the reverence is important for the Constitution to thrive as well as survive in India right now. All right, so that would be all in today's session. Thank you very much, guys, for joining me over here. We'll meet again in another session where we'll be discussing next about the Union Executive. All right, so do not forget to tune in with me in the next episode of this Polity in 20 minutes. That would be all. Thank you. Bye-bye. Take care and Jai Hind. Plus, do not forget to like, share, as well as subscribe to our channel. Thank you. Bye-bye. Take care. Jai Hind.